Crime Feast. True crime stories.
On the night of May 11, 2012, Victory Road in Derby, England was engulfed in thick black smoke. The source was number 18. It was around 4 a.m. and the usually quiet street was in chaos. Mairead Philpott was on the phone in front of the house to emergency services. The house is on fire and there's still 6 kids trapped inside. It took the fire brigade just 6 minutes to arrive on the scene. When they arrived, Mairead was out front crying. Mick Philpott was in the back garden on the phone. The street was filled with neighbors. Some were crying, some were actually trying to get inside the house by climbing a caravan at the side to reach an upstairs window, as the front door was impossible to get through. As firemen battled the smoke and flames, everyone waited with held breath. But although it wasn't said out loud, most people there knew that the silence that had replaced the children's cries for help could only mean one thing. The firemen started to bring out the lifeless bodies of the Philpott children, who were laid on the pavement. Paramedics tried desperately to revive each child as they came out. Then miraculously they discovered Duane Philpott. The oldest child, still inside the house, was still breathing, and he was rushed immediately to the hospital. But 2 days later he sadly died. All 6 of the children who had lost their lives had died of smoke inhalation. As days passed, mourners from the community paid respects to the lost children by leaving flowers, candles, and teddy bears outside the property. They also started a collection to help with the funeral costs and raised over £11,000 in total. Phil and his wife had been put into a local hotel while fire crews examined the ruined home. What they discovered was shocking. The fire was no accident. They found the source of the fire was in fact petrol that had been poured through the letterbox and set alight. Police quickly discovered that Philpott had a mistress who until very recently had lived at the home with the family. Lisa Willis had 5 children with Philpott, who had gone with her when she left. It was then discovered that there was a court hearing regarding the custody of those 5 children the very morning of the fire. Willis was immediately brought in for questioning but released rather quickly, as police were satisfied she had not been involved in the arson. Philpott asked police if he could speak to the media, and police agreed, thinking this could lead to information about the person or reason behind this horrific and cowardly crime. On the day of the televised press conference, the officer in charge was taken aback by Philpott's behavior and mood, noting that he seemed almost jovial, like this was all just a game.
First of all, I want to thank my 3 oldest children, because they are helping us to cope with what's going on. And then there's a young lad called Daniel Stevenson who tried to get in the house, the same as myself, Joe across the road, and the Butler brothers. And of course there's the poor firemen, the police, the ambulances, the doctors, the nurses, literally everybody who tried to help save our children. They couldn't. Excuse me a minute. We've decided that through our son Duane, and unfortunately the last one to pass away, that we're going to donate his organs to save another child, which is what we want, because if you can save another child, that makes us happy. It takes a bit of the pain away. And we can't express our gratitude to everybody that's been concerned with the case, with what's been going on. I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it. We grew up in a community that's had a lot of problems with violence and God knows what else, and to see this community to come together like they have, it's just too overwhelming. We've had people from America, France, even the travelling community. It's just, we've been to see them, it's just overwhelming, isn't it? But I say I can't express enough the police, the fire brigade and the ambulance services, because what we feel, them poor gentlemen from the fire brigade who saw what we've seen, you know, my heart goes out to them, because it's not just us that's suffering, it's them as well, it's everybody. But there's one thing I would request is please leave my family alone. If you've got any questions or anything at all, Please don't come through me or my family. Please go to the police, because what's happening at the moment, you're disrupting what these officers are trying to do. So please, I beg you, leave us alone and let us try and live in peace and quiet. That's all I ask. Thank you.
Suspicious of this behavior, officers started to look more closely at Philpott, and what they discovered shocked them. Mick Philpott had 17 children with another on the way. He had been in the spotlight a few times before when he had contacted the media after being refused a larger property by the council. This backfired and the media labelled him Shameless Mick, Britain's biggest scrounger. He was then put back into the spotlight when he appeared on a documentary about benefits in Britain, in which a Member of Parliament, Anne Widdecombe, was sent to live with the family. She was disgusted with Phil's attitude to women, whom he referred to as bitches. Then once again he was back in the public eye when he appeared on television shows, The Jeremy Kyle Show and This Morning. So it was clear that Phil enjoyed being in the media's spotlight. What police discovered next was shocking and disturbing. In 1978, at the age of 21, Philpott was charged with the attempted murder of his girlfriend at the time, Kim Hill, and for grievous bodily harm against Kim's mother. He stabbed Hill repeatedly when she sent him a letter to end the relationship, and also stabbed Hill's mother as she attempted to protect her daughter. Hill was stabbed around a dozen times, but miraculously survived. Philpott was convicted and sentenced to 7 years in prison. He was released 3.5 years later. He had also previously shot Hill in the groin because he wasn't happy with her choice of dress one night, and on another occasion had hit her with a hammer, cracking her kneecap when she was babysitting because he wasn't getting enough attention. In 1986, Philpott married for the first time. He had 3 children with Pamela Lomax before leaving her to start a relationship with 14-year-old Heather Keogh. The pair waited until Keogh's 16th birthday before moving in together. Keogh and Philpott had 2 sons very quickly, but Philpott, who wanted a daughter, started to beat Keogh because she hadn't given him one. Philpott popped back up on the police's radar again in 1991. This time for headbutting a colleague. He was charged with ABH, actual bodily harm. He was given a 2-year conditional discharge. Philpott met 19-year-old Mairead Duffy in 2000 after leaving Keogh. Duffy was a single mother. She quickly moved into Philpott's council house. Then in 2001, Mick Philpott met a 16-year-old single mother, Lisa Willis. She became his mistress and less than a year later moved in with Philpott and Mairead. By 2007, Mairead was pregnant with her 5th child to Philpott. Willis was also pregnant with her 5th child to Philpott. The woman swapped over each night. One would spend the night with Philpott in his caravan at the side of the house, while the other took care of the children in the house. After looking so thoroughly at Philpott's past, along with the fact he had recently split with Willis, and she was due in court to try and win full custody of her children to Philpott, was enough for police to believe he was more than capable of doing whatever it took to beat Willis. Investigators bugged the hotel room where Mick Philpott and his wife had been staying since the fire. It was quickly evident that the parents of the 6 children who lost their lives were guilty of setting the fire that had taken those innocent lives. Not only this, they also discovered a third person was involved. Paul Mosley, a friend of the pair, had been involved in planning the fire. Mosley had been talking to the pair in their hotel room and was clearly having second thoughts about everything. That's when Philpott had Mairead perform a sexual act on Mosley, right there in the room, in order to keep his silence. Forensics had found that both Mick Philpott and Paul Mosley had petrol on their clothing. There was also an empty petrol can and a glove found near the home. Police arrested Mick and Mairead Philpott on the 28th of May 2012, and both charged with murder 2 days later. Mosley was arrested and charged with murder on the 5th of November. The charges for all 3 were dropped to manslaughter, as it was decided that they had not intentionally killed the children, but had instead tried to frame Philpott's ex Willis. The verdict: guilty Mick Philpott, Mairead Philpott, and Paul Mosley were, on the 2nd of April 2013, each found guilty of manslaughter. The sentence: Mick Philpott life, minimum 15 years. Mairead Philpott 17 years, minimum 8 years. Paul Mosley 17 years, minimum 8 years. Where are they now? Mairead, now 40, was released on parole in November 2020 and is currently free. She was spotted shortly after release enjoying lunch outside a pub in Newbury, before going on a little shopping spree with money shed saved from her benefits. She has been living in a bail hostel since her release. Mairead divorced Philpott in 2014. Paul Mosley, now 54, was allegedly released 3 months later in February 2021. Mick Philpott, now 65, is currently serving his sentence in Hemp, Wakefield, West York.
Crime Feast. True crime stories.